I'm Mike from Retro Boost. This is a very goofy and big video. It was a lot of work to edit all this together, so if you find the video entertaining or educational or anything like that, feel free to subscribe. It is the best way to help me grow the channel. I appreciate it. With that said, let's get started. So, I do a lot of retro gaming stuff, both just on my own time and for this channel. And one of my big recent interests has been exploring the world of retro gaming enhancement, devices like RetroTINK and CARBY and alternate cabling, like higher spec shielded cables, and using Extron matrix switchers. It's such a cool universe of products, and it's breathed a whole new life into my retro gaming collection. I collected all these consoles and I was never playing them because they looked like butt on my new TV. But then discovering RetroTINK and similar things, now, whew, I'm back in, baby. It's great. 2X Pro, 2X Pro M, 5X Pro, and then playing around with the CARBY for the GameCube. It's awesome stuff. But I was thinking recently, how do these devices compare to emulation? And what I mean by emulation is virtual console. So I'm sure everyone knows what the virtual console is. Nintendo's giant collection of classic games from all kinds of different eras and consoles made available conveniently for purchase on one console. Started with the Wii, then they went to the Wii U, and then it kind of lives on with the subscription service with the Switch, although it's a little bit different how that behaves. But same idea, big catalog of classic games, so on and so forth. So I was curious to compare. Let's see what the RetroTINK devices are doing, like how much work they're putting in, the effort, the result, what RetroTINK can do against what Virtual Console does. Because given the choice, I mean, yeah, emulations should always look better, right? Well, it depends on what you have, and PC emulation's a different beast in regard to this. We're going to be focusing on these console versions. So it's going to be interesting because we got like 3 different eras to compare. We have the Wii, which is a 480p console. Now, I can't show the actual Wii, and I was so bummed about this. I did a system transfer from Wii to my Wii U. The idea there being that if you do that and you transfer everything over, you get discounts on the Wii U catalog of the same games. It discounts the prices pretty dramatically, and you can get them all on Wii U. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, because the Wii U is an HD device. You can output in 1080p. Does it actually scale the games up? Hard to say. I tried to get a definitive answer on that. I find conflicting answers online, but I did my own test. I put the console in 480p mode, and then I put it back in 1080p mode, and I compared the games. They look a lot different and better in 1080p. So I would say, yes, it's most likely giving you a 1080p experience of these Virtual Console games. And then lastly, Switch. I do not have the expansion pass. I own all of these games already way too many times between physical and the multiple virtual consoles. I don't feel the need to have a subscription to access them on a third thing. So yeah, however, we will be using the Mario 3D All-Stars collection, though, to compare N64, Wii, and GameCube of those 3 Mario games across the different hardware things. For Wii, since I don't have the actual, I had them on an SD card and it worked, but that SD card is gone now. I spent a whole day trying to find it. The good news is, though, there's a Wii app in the Wii U, and that is very obviously 480p when you boot it up, regardless of what the console itself is outputting. So I can still showcase the 480p Wii Virtual Console experience out of my Wii U. So that's what we're going to be doing. RetroTINK 2X Pro and 5X Pro versus the Wii Virtual Console, the Wii U 1080p Virtual Console, and then the Mario 3D All-Stars collection at the end in those games. We'll see how RetroTINK compares. How is it upscaling and comparing to the Virtual Console counterparts? This is just for fun, so obviously emulation, should win this, but it's just kind of interesting to see how much work and the results are of what RetroTINK devices can do. And we'll do more than just the original cables. We'll go into some of that in a minute here too. But let's go ahead and get it started with some NES demos. Let's go ahead and do the 2X Pro against the Wii U, and see what happens. I should have said before we started, I was just too excited. I didn't do anything as far as like changing color settings or scaling or decreasing the size of any of these demos. They are all just as I captured them. In that regard, everything is like set to 1080p, which is the idea for most of these devices to be output as. They're all designed at the end of the day to be seen on a TV like that, at least the Wii U and the 5X Pro, stuff like that. So it made the most sense. With that said, though, for the 2X Pro demos, I did align them a little better just to make it easier to compare with. I did it for a couple videos just for the sake of appreciating side-by-sides. However, the still image portions after each demo are completely untouched. That's just how it looked as it was captured right from the consoles. That way we can get both. We get the ease of the side-by-side for seeing them side-by-side, but then also we get to see them without that effect, without me tainting the quality of the source. So, with all that said, what did we learn here today? Well, you'd think it would have been a wash, right? But there are some differences. The 2X Pro is like obviously more vivid and bright than the Virtual consoles. Either one of them, the Wii or the Wii U, are so dim by comparison. That's really interesting. I will say, for any situation that it looks like that you see throughout this, if you just have the one thing on in front of you, it's gonna be fine. I used to sell TVs back in the day, and I would tell people, like, yeah, I mean, here's the one for $5,000, here's the one for, $3,500. Is there a difference here? Obviously, yes, but if you take either one of them home and that's all you had, you're gonna like it. I sold expensive TVs. Those numbers were not inaccurate. The most expensive one I think I ever sold was like $13,000. So the same logic applies, though. If you had it right in front of you, that's all you had, it's gonna be fine. So it's interesting now to really see how different they are in that regard. Now, the Virtual Console ones definitely had the advantage for clarity, that's for sure. But it is interesting that if I had to choose, I mean, I like the color of the 2X Pro more. There are some problems too with overscan. We do have, like, the blue area on the side of the 2X Pro, which the Virtual Console ones don't have, so there's other differences like that. the Virtual Console ones are just a cleaner overall with their presentation and experience. But now let's throw the 5X Pro into the ring and see how this guy does. So the 5X Pro is a 1080p, just full-on like video processor, whereas the 2X Pro is a line doubler. So we should hopefully see an improvement given the hardware difference there. But let's see what happens now when this new challenger enters the fray. So similar. The 5X Pro, we're getting more detail, we're getting more clarity, we can, especially that still image portion, we can see more of the same kind of graphical patterns that the Virtual Console ones have that the 2X Pro didn't, while still maintaining that overall brighter, more popping picture. So that's pretty cool. Now if I had to choose which one, I'd still probably go with the Virtual Console here, mainly because we don't get like a lot of that fuzz and that just kind of jittering, vibrating situation that happens with this hardware. But overall, you know, we can see that the RetroTINK devices are doing a fair job in improving the signal and bringing it up pretty well. They're not, it isn't completely a curb stomp. Let's move on now though to the Super Nintendo. Once again, we'll start with 2X Pro running composite cables. Then we'll do 5X Pro right afterward. Okay, so it's kind of a little more of the same on Super Nintendo. 2X Pro is good on its own at least, but definitely can't compare to the Virtual Console ones, although it still has the brighter, more pop-in color, which I prefer personally. The 5X Pro gets a little bit closer to matching, still can't match the overall clarity of the Virtual Console ones, but weirdly enough, the Wii Virtual Console experience has some gunk at the bottom of the screen. Some little, if you want to call it overscan, if it's technically overscan or not, but there's some silliness happening at the bottom of the screen, so it isn't totally perfect. That's interesting. So we can safely say that Virtual Console is going to defeat Composite into a modern day TV probably any day of the week. Color aside, I don't think that it's worth it if you're sacrificing the clarity to that much of a degree. And again, remember that on like a CRT, it wouldn't be this way. It'd still be like awesome looking. But on a modern day TV, you get a lot of that fuzz and that loss of clarity, a lot of noise and problems like that. So, if the problem's composite, what if we get rid of that? Because here's the other part of the awesome retro gaming technology universe is we can not only just, scale the image up in various ways to help improve it, but we can also improve the pipeline in which the video signal travels to begin with. Products like HD Retrovision's component cables, for example, which are made for a variety of consoles. I own them for Super Nintendo, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, and Wii. They're shielded component cables. The cool thing about component is the video signal is processed in a much more efficient way across multiple cables, which preserves more of what's supposed to be there, since you're not trying to cram it all down one pipeline like how Composite works. But also, since it's shielded, you have better performance in regard to eliminating crosstalk, protection from interference, which analog signals are very susceptible to. So, let's now try this again on Super Nintendo, but let's upgrade the cables. Let's now go to component cables and see how these consoles stack up, these devices rather, stack up. 2X Pro, 5X Pro with component versus Virtual Console. All right, now we're getting somewhere. So that markedly improved the performance out of the original hardware. The 2X Pro looked leaps and bounds better in my opinion. The color is still, I think the color is still superior on the RetroTINK devices, but now our clarity is getting closer. 2X Pro looked awesome. 5X Pro, man, it's starting to get really close. Like, you almost can't tell when you pause it. It's really impressive. On the screenshot, we can see that there's a little bit of noise visible that isn't in the Virtual Console versions. I would say the 5X Pro is better than the Wii Virtual Console, but is just barely behind the Wii U because of like that little bit of noise and stuff like that. But man, that goes to show what these devices can do out of the original hardware if you make sure that your video pathway is as good as it can possibly be. Because once we introduced Component, everything changed there. Now it's looking really, really impressive. So there's our Super Nintendo and NES. I would say NES Virtual Console wins, although the color isn't as quite appealing side by side. Super Nintendo Virtual Console definitely wins unless you introduce those better cabling pathways, but again, the color kind of pops more on the original hardware in either case. It's just a matter of increasing that clarity and overall just kind of definition on the Virtual Console versions. Let's step it up though into the 3D space with N64. This is going to be with Composite. I don't have anything superior cable pathway wise or hardware wise to try yet. N64, it isn't as simple as just getting yourself a better cable. It does require hardware modification. I've been looking into it and testing some things, but I don't have something working now that I'm comfortable with showing off. So we're just going to use Composite. I haven't used S-Video. S-Video is an easy midpoint, by the way, to try for Super Nintendo and N64, even GameCube for that matter, if you're looking to improve a little bit. It's not a night and day difference over Composite, though, which is why I'm not demonstrating it here. It just isn't enough to really justify doing all of that additional capture and editing it, because this whole thing was a lot of work to do, okay? Let me just throw that out there. I don't need to add more on top of it for minimal gains. So, N64, 2X Pro, 5X Pro Composite, versus Virtual Console, and now we can start to introduce the Switch, because now we're going to add the Mario 3D All-Stars collection, Mario 64. So here we go. We got a new guy now.
Dear Mario, please come to the castle. I have baked a cake for you. Yours truly, Princess Toadstool. Peach. Dear Mario, please come to the castle. I have baked a cake for you. Yours truly, Princess Toadstool. Peach. Dear Mario, please come to the castle. I have baked a cake for you. Yours truly, Princess Toadstool. Peach. Dear Mario, please come to the castle. I have baked a cake for you. Yours truly, Princess Toadstool. Peach. Dear Mario, please come to the castle. I have baked a cake for you. Yours truly, Princess Toadstool. Peach. Dear Mario, please come to the castle. I have baked a cake for you. Yours truly, Princess Toadstool. Peach.
Well, this is the first time now seeing the Nintendo Switch in the equation, and yeah, Mario 64 has never quite looked better. That was an absolute curb stomp from that perspective, and that's kind of what I expected. The 5X Pro does a pretty good job when compared to, say, the Wii Virtual Console and so on, but against the Nintendo Switch, all fall. It is interesting, though, that this color situation continues. The RetroTINK devices continue to be the brighter, more vivid in comparison to the Wii and Wii U Virtual Consoles, but the Switch doesn't have that problem. The Switch is just as bright and vivid as the RetroTINK devices are, which I guess tells me that the Switch is kind of closer to what the original game is supposed to be from a color processing standpoint. I've noticed in the past that Virtual Console games on the Wii tend to be a little more, like, I don't know, dark, tainted. I'm not sure what the right word for this is. Back when I did my Star Fox 64 review on the channel, this is way back when the channel first started, I did all the capture on the Wii Virtual Console version because it looks so much better than the the N64 version. And then I did B-roll footage to get capture of me using the Rumble Pack, and that was the original hardware, and it's like so much, like, noticeably more colorful than the Virtual Console version is. So I've noticed this problem going back years. But it is interesting now that we have a new contender. The Switch doesn't have that issue. Really interesting. So we're learning things today. Hey, subscribe if you learned something, right? So, alright, kind of as expected, the emulations on Virtual Console and so on are better for N64. I mean, no surprise there. That's what I was fully expecting. The color issue is interesting. So now let's step it up to the GameCube, where we introduce two new challengers. The RetroTINK 2X Pro M, which is essentially the same thing as the 2X Pro, but it's also designed to handle 480p pass-through, which makes it ideal for, say, GameCube, PS2, original Xbox. Games that can run at 480p can just pass through, and they look so much better. Even higher than that, like 576p, I believe, is also compatible. Not 720 though. You get higher than that, you're gonna be in trouble. It is, as far as I can tell, out of circulation though, so you may not be able to buy this one anymore. But it is an interesting midpoint, at least it used to be price-wise, between the 2X Pro and 5X Pro for those middle generation systems. We got that, and we'll also give the CARBY a chance to come out and play. The CARBY is a very well-priced video adapting alternative to RetroTINK. If GameCube is your main thing, CARBY might be the thing for you. As long as you have a GameCube that has the digital AV port on the back, CARBY acts as the HDMI converter for it, which is really awesome. So we'll have all those devices go head-to-head against the Nintendo Switch version of Super Mario Sunshine and see who comes out on top. And we'll be doing composite, component, the whole 9 yards. It's a full-on just slobber knocker demonstration here. So brace yourself, we're going in. Alright, this one was interesting. So something happened here that happened before on the channel. Back when I did my review of the Retrobit Prism component cables, which are a new alternative cable output for the GameCube. They let you do, the 480p modes and such, and they're shielded. Something I noticed with that is that on the 2X Pro and 2X Pro M, the image on those cables is darker than composite. So now it's flipped. So composite versus emulation, the brightness is like the same. Component on the 2X Pro and 2X Pro M, darker. So now RetroTINK has the darker, more, depressing color compared to the emulation on the Switch version of this game. So, weird, right? The 5X Pro does not have that problem. It's just as vivid no matter what the cable source is. Component just gives it that added clarity because now the game is running at a completely different base resolution than its composite counterpart is. It's progressive versus interlaced. It's a higher source because it would have been like 480i on composite at best. Versus component, now it can be 480p or even 576p. I think it's 576. Some games are either way. So it's a higher overall base experience, which translates to the 5X Pro having an easier time, I would imagine at least, getting it upscaled further. So awesome. The 5X Pro did a great job holding its own against the Switch version. The Switch version still is absolutely gorgeous though. And this is where I think CARBY actually wins, which kind of makes sense, because CARBY's it's for the GameCube specifically, whereas RetroTINK devices, depending on the model, are intended for really any old game console. I mean, the 2X Pro can accept anything up until you get into like your 480p consoles. The 2X Pro M can take basically everything except for like modern consoles that do 720p, and the 5X Pro is designed to do really whatever you want. You can put a DVD player into it, for God's sake. Whereas the CARBY is a GameCube device, so that one had the picture quality closest to the flavor of an emulation, at least in my opinion, which is, like I said, not too surprising, but also interesting. So the winner's still the Nintendo Switch version, but CARBY and the 5X Pro with component, once again, are not lagging too far behind. They do an excellent job of bringing the picture quality up. So now, as a grand finale, let's go to the Wii. We're going to compare Super Mario Galaxy running on the Wii using the 2X Pro M, which again is designed for a 480p output, which the Wii does. We're going to do the 2X Pro M and the 5X Pro doing component each. And as a bonus, we'll do 4x3 output and 16x9 output on the 5X Pro against the Switch version of Super Mario Galaxy. So let's see all of this.
Yes!
Interesting, interesting, interesting. It just looks like someone put like a plastic film over the RetroTINK side compared to the Switch side. It's a really crisp and clean version of the game running on Switch. The 5X Pro, I think, does the best. 4x3 or 16x9, I think they both look really great. The 4x3 is probably the superior, but you know, the Wii is designed to operate in either mode, so as long as you have the internal settings set correctly, the 5X Pro does a great job of working with that. I would say that 4x3 is probably what you want to go with, but they're both great, but neither one of them really stack up all that well to the Switch. I think at this point we're exceeding what the 5X Pro can really shine. The Super Nintendo was like peak performance. It was excellent. It was so good. But now we're looking at like the Wii, clearly not as good as the Switch version. But again, by itself on your TV, if it's all you had in front of you, it is still really awesome and not by any means like distractingly bad or even bad at all. It's good. So there we go. We did a lot of comparing there. That was a lot of clips and content. So I hope this was interesting. This wasn't intended or meant to in any way to like shame RetroTINK or the original hardware. Quite the opposite. I'm celebrating it because like look how close RetroTINK can get some of these consoles to be compared to emulations that are running on hardware like by itself, not a cartridge, not a disc, and in some of these examples like HD like native output with the Wii U in some instances, well most instances, and the Switch. It's very impressive, it's very awesome, and like I said at the beginning, RetroTINK is what allowed me a whole new outlook on life for my original console collection. If I had a CRT TV anymore, it wouldn't really be an issue. I had one of those like set up right here and be playing on that and there'd be no complaints. But I've got modern day stuff now, so RetroTINK really helps out. And again, it's also important to factor in your cabling as well, because that Super Nintendo wouldn't look anywhere near as good if it was still composite. You give a component and you can bring out more of what that console always wants to give you, but it can't because composite on modern TVs sucks. So that really helps as well. Thank you for joining me. Hope you found this entertaining, educational, so on and so forth. It was a lot of work to put this together, so if you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing. It is the best way for me to grow this channel, but I do appreciate you watching. Have a good rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one.